All right, well, in this video we are going to talk about argumentation, specifically classical argumentation. Now, when we say classical, we're talking about way back in the day. We're going to ancient Greeks, yes. But specifically, we're talking about Aristotle. Sometimes this is called Aristotelian argumentation because we give him credit. Why? Well, Aristotle wrote a book called Rhetoric. And this is where we get a lot of these concepts from. And honestly, classical argumentation is probably something you've been taught already. We were discussing elements of classical argumentation when we were going over rhetoric. This is why we use the term rhetoric. It goes back to ancient Greece. Rhetor, if I understand correctly, means it's a teacher. Rhetoric is going to be the adjective, then the noun version. Anyway, the rhetoric, if we try to translate the etymology of the word, probably breaks down to a product of a teacher. So it's like a lesson. But we're going to be talking about arguments, which could just as well be a product of you teaching someone something that you want to convince them of. But let's see if we can find a better definition. Okay, here is some breakdown to help you with classical argumentation. It's posted to Canvas. I did pull some of this from ChatGPT, and honestly, it's a great summary. So I think it's doing a good job. All right. This top section kind of summarizes the main points of classical argumentation, and then here it breaks it down in what looks like outline form. Not exactly, but something like that. All right, if you've ever learned how to outline, and I've taught you how to outline, that outline probably for, say, an essay goes something like this. Introduction. At the end of introduction, a thesis statement, which is your claim. That thesis statement is then followed by the body of the essay, where the main points are presented and evidence is used to support those main points. Then you bring in opposing viewpoints. You bring in and you state objectively, as you can, what others have said on the topic. You respond to it in the form of a rebuttal, and then you conclude your argument. That is pretty common. That is almost exactly word for word what classical argumentation presents. Now, most of classical argumentation is not really focused on the structure for how you present an argument, but kind of the things, the elements that you want to include. So there may be some different terms than what I just brought up. So we're going to talk about those. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so you have your claim. This is that thesis statement, right? This is the point that you're trying to make. A statement or proposition put forward as true or valid. So if you're arguing something, and you can have more than one claim in an essay, but the main claim, your thesis statement, it's the thing you're going to argue. It is the goal of the argument to present your claim. Evidence, you're going to have facts, examples, data, research, expert opinions, quotes, examples, reasoning, which we just talked about in a previous video. These are the logical connections and inferences, the things you interpret from data, made to demonstrate the validity of the claim. It's used to support it. So that process you went through reason, you can now bring that into your argument to explain how you came to the conclusion. If you didn't reason, then you can't explain that. Counter arguments, anticipating and addressing opposing viewpoints and objections, which is kind of a two-part process. You state the opposing viewpoint, then you respond to it. Also has to do with the rebuttal. Persuasive techniques, we call these rhetorical strategies. Using rhetorical devices, emotional appeals, ethical considerations to sway others' opinions. Emotional appeals, that's code for pathos. Ethical considerations, that's code for ethos. And then rhetorical devices, it's going to also fall under logos. Okay, so these are some important terms, but if we break down what what Aristotle said, this is kind of how he discusses it in his book, Rhetoric. And when I say book, what it may have actually looked like back then may be very different than what we think of it as a book, but you know, you can go download it. It's a thing. All right, introduction. So you're going to introduce topic, provide any relevant background information, and then you follow up with your thesis statement. This is pretty consistent with typical writing. Exposition. This is your claim. This is the main argument itself. It's being called exposition. Presenting the main argument in support of a thesis statement. Providing evidence, facts, and examples to support each argument. So up here, that's this evidence section. Establishing credibility and expertise and references, reliable sources, and authorities. So you want to establish your credibility early in an argument, and then you want to consistently reassert your credibility by using good information that continues to reinforce that you are trustworthy, your sources are trustworthy, people should trust you and agree with you. All right, now this isn't necessarily paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, paragraph 4, paragraph 5. I think this looks a little bit different. We would probably spend a lot of time on this exposition section. You can even mix refutation in with it, but when we say refutation, we're probably thinking opposing viewpoints and objections or rebuttals, anticipating and counteracting potential arguments against the thesis. You could literally respond to arguments that are out in the world, or you can simply anticipate something someone has said, assuming someone might disagree with something you said, so you can address that point in your paper. This would fall under this concept of refutation and demonstrating weakness and inconsistencies in opposing positions. You need to explain why your side of the argument is superior to the other. It doesn't mean they're wrong. Now, if there's something weak, point it out. If there's something illogical, point it out. But the ultimate goal is to show how your side is superior, not just how theirs is inferior, right? But if it is, point it out. Confirmation. Further supporting and elaborating on the main arguments, strengthening the case with additional evidence and reasoning, making logical connections, and providing coherence in the overall argument. This, you can see elements of it within exposition and elements within refutation. So structurally, are you going to have a confirmation section? Probably not. It would probably just fall under your rebuttal, or anything that follows the rebuttal in your paper, maybe even part of your conclusion, which is the last point, summarizing the main points, restating the thesis, reinforcing the credibility of the argument, appealing to the audience's emotions and sense of logic. So all these really important things to do, and it's probably something you're already familiar with. We call it classical argumentation, Aristotelian argumentation. You may just call it an outline for an essay. But this is the origin. This is where it comes back to. Now, why are we talking about it? This is not the only way to do this. This is one of at least 3 that we're going to talk about in this unit. In addition to this, we have other forms of argumentation that we'll get to. But when you talk about base fundamental argumentation, you're probably talking about classical argumentation, and this would be expected. This is really good if you have a clear viewpoint and you simply want to present it in a persuasive way. This is what classical argumentation is good for. This is not good if you want to present compromise, because there's no compromise in classical argumentation structure. Now, you can take elements of each of these styles and mix it to create something that works for you, but in and of itself, classic argumentation destroys all enemies, and it assumes it's correct. All right, I hope that was helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.